During my birthday celebration dinner at a fancy restaurant, my husband went to the restroom and left his iPad on the table. A notification popped up from the banking app. New transaction, tuition fee, paid for the first semester for a girl named Daisy, at a law school in another state. We had been married for 10 years and were actively trying for IVF. I quietly deleted the notification. The next morning during my birthday dinner last Friday, my husband decided to pull the most ridiculous magic trick I've ever seen. He made our 10-year marriage disappear. We were at this fancy restaurant he picked, the kind that serves water like it's wine and charges extra for breathing. Everything looked perfect. Candles, soft jazz, his "I'm the best husband ever" smile, until his iPad sitting on the table lit up. At first, I didn't even look. But then a notification popped up from our bank app. New transaction, tuition fee paid, Daisy P., Boston Law School. I froze. Daisy? Who the hell is Daisy? We don't have kids. We don't even have nieces that age. The only school we've been paying for is IVF, which hasn't exactly gone great. He came back from the restroom, totally relaxed, sipping his wine like life was perfect. I just smiled, pretending I hadn't just watched our marriage crumble in real time. I didn't say a word. I deleted the notification, finished my steak, even laughed at his stupid jokes. By morning, everything looked the same. Except when the home phone rang. I wasn't always the type to snoop. I used to be the trust your husband, don't check his phone kind of wife. We'd been together for a decade, married for 10 years, and still trying to have a baby through IVF. It's been rough. 2 failed rounds, endless hormone shots, and bills that could fund a small wedding every month. Through all of it, he kept saying the same thing. I've got us. Don't stress. Just focus on yourself, and I did. I believed him because that's what you do when you love someone. You let them handle what they claim they can handle. He started traveling more over the last year. Boston mostly. He said his firm was expanding there, and they needed him to meet new clients. Every trip lasted about a week, always perfectly timed around my IVF appointments. I remember thinking, at least one of us is moving forward. He'd send me pictures while he was away. A dinner table with 2 glasses but only 1 plate in the frame. A view from a hotel balcony, his suitcase by the window. Every photo looked sterile, polished. Like he'd taken it on purpose just to prove he was busy. But not once did he send a photo of himself. When I asked for one, he laughed. Babe, I'm in a suit at a conference. It's boring. You don't need to see that. And I just said, okay, because I didn't want to sound clingy. The week before my birthday, he promised he'd be home early from Boston. He said, don't plan anything, I've got a surprise. I didn't think much of it. After 10 years, surprises usually meant a dinner reservation or flowers, not whatever that iPad notification was. But the night of the dinner, he was perfect. Too perfect. He wore the cologne I bought him for our anniversary, pulled out my chair, even made a dumb toast about new beginnings. It was the kind of gesture men make when they're trying to drown their guilt in romance. And the worst part? I fell for it. When I saw that notification, my brain didn't even process it at first. Tuition fee. Daisy P. Boston Law School. It looked so official, so random. I almost convinced myself it was a client's kid or some tax write-off he forgot to mention. But then I remembered, we don't do client favors. He's an analyst, not a charity. He came back from the restroom, grinning, asking if I wanted dessert. You look serious, he said, half laughing. What's going on in that head of yours? I smiled and said, just thinking about how lucky I am. He touched my hand. You should. Not everyone gets to marry their best friend. If I hadn't just seen that message, I probably would have believed him. We finished dinner, walked to the car. He drove home humming to some old jazz song, completely unaware I was memorizing every word he said, every lie dressed up as routine. When we got home, he gave me a small wrapped box, a necklace. Gold, simple, beautiful. I put it on, smiled, and said thank you. That night, he fell asleep instantly. I couldn't. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe, wondering how many times I'd heard him do that while he was dreaming about someone else. I kept replaying that notification in my head. Tuition? Law school? Daisy? None of it made sense. Unless you stopped trying to make it make sense. And once I stopped, everything lined up too easily. The extra trips, the late meetings, the emergency calls. The next morning, I woke up early, made breakfast like nothing happened. He walked into the kitchen still half asleep, kissed my cheek, said, "Best birthday ever, huh?" "Yeah," I said, flipping pancakes. "You really outdid yourself." He didn't notice the tone. He never did. While he was in the shower, I grabbed his iPad again. I opened the banking app. Same account. Same transaction history. The tuition payment wasn't the first. There were several. Every few months, same amount, same name. Daisy P, that's when something in me shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt this clarity, like a glass shattering quietly. By the time he came downstairs, I had already decided what to do. He kissed me goodbye, said he had a busy day ahead. I smiled, said me too, and watched him leave. I sat there for a few seconds, looking around our spotless kitchen, the life we built together, the photos on the fridge, the IVF calendar on the wall. Then I opened my laptop, logged into our joint account, and started saving receipts. It wasn't about catching him. It was about proving to myself that I wasn't crazy. And by the time I was done, I knew I wasn't. I didn't confront him right away. What's the point? Men like him only admit what you can prove. And I wasn't ready to show my cards yet. So I smiled, kissed him goodbye every morning, and started paying attention. At first, I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was a logical reason he was paying some random girl's tuition. But the more I looked, the less logical it got. I logged into our joint account again. Same pattern, quarterly transfers, hotel charges near Boston, expensive dinners under his corporate card. Each one labeled something stupid like client dinner or educational sponsorship. I'm not an accountant, but even I know you don't need to sponsor someone when your IVF bills are sitting unpaid. He started leaving for business trips again, and I let him go. Packed his bags. Kissed him at the door. "Bring me something from Boston," I joked. He smiled, kissed my forehead, said, "You're the best," and left. The moment his car turned the corner, I called a private investigator. I didn't give a sob story. I just said, "My husband's lying about where he's going. I want confirmation." The guy laughed and said, "You'd be surprised how often I hear that." 3 days later, I got the photos. They were exactly what I expected, which somehow made them worse. My husband. Same man who kissed my forehead every morning. Standing outside a small apartment complex in Boston, holding hands with a young woman who looked barely 20. She was smiling. He was smiling. They looked like a couple, not an affair. I stared at the photos until my coffee went cold. Then I texted the investigator, "Thank you. That's all I needed." That night, he called from Boston. He said he missed me, that the meetings were going well, that he'd be home by Sunday. I said, "Can't wait to see you." He told me he'd bring pastries from that bakery I loved. I almost laughed. When he got home, he did exactly that. Walked in like nothing was wrong, handed me a box of pastries, kissed my cheek. "See, I told you I'd be quick," I smiled. "Yeah, you're a man of your word." He didn't catch the sarcasm. I waited. Patience is the sharpest weapon when someone thinks you're clueless. I gathered everything. Screenshots of bank transactions, copies of flight itineraries, the photos from Boston. I stored them neatly in a folder labeled Receipts. Fitting, right? Over the next few weeks, I started noticing smaller details I'd missed before. The way he'd check his phone and tilt the screen away. The sudden smiles at random texts. The business calls that lasted too long but never mentioned business. Once, he left his Apple Watch charging in the kitchen. A message popped up, "Can't wait to see you again. You make me feel like I'm finally living." It was from Daisy. I remember laughing. Not crying, laughing. Because at that point, it stopped hurting. It just became clear. 10 years, and I'd been building a future while he was building an escape plan. I made my own plan. Quietly. Legally. I met with a lawyer, laid everything on the table. She didn't even blink. "You've got more than enough," she said. "We'll handle it discreetly." That word, discreetly, sounded like peace. At home, I acted the same. Cooked dinner. Asked about his day. Let him think everything was normal. One night, he walked in late, said, "Sorry, traffic was hell." I looked at him, nodded, and said, "I know." He smiled, thinking I meant the commute. By the time he left for his next trip, everything was ready. The lawyer had the documents. The bank had copies of the statements. I had every proof filed. He was driving to Boston. I was driving to the courthouse. He texted me from the airport. "Boarding now." "Love you," I replied. Love you too. Safe flight. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and sat on the couch watching our wedding video. Not because I missed him, but because I wanted to remember what trusting him used to feel like. Every smile in that video looked staged now. Every vow sounded rehearsed. When he came home that weekend, everything looked the same. Dinner was ready, the house was spotless. He wrapped his arms around me from behind and said, God, I missed you. Did you? I asked quietly. He chuckled. Of course I did. Why wouldn't I? I turned, kissed his cheek, and said, No reason. He had no idea. The petition had already been filed. The court had already accepted it. His perfect little double life was about to implode, and he didn't even see the cracks forming. That night, when he fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling again, same as that first night after my birthday dinner. Only this time I wasn't hurt. I was calm, because the difference between suspicion and proof is peace. He didn't notice anything was off. That's the funny thing about people who lie. They think the world bends around their version of the truth. He still kissed me goodbye every morning, still texted miss you like he hadn't spent the night before with someone else. I let him. It made everything easier. 2 weeks later, the papers were ready. My lawyer said, You can serve him directly or let the court do it. I told her, I'd rather he hear it from someone official. She smiled. Understood. That Friday morning felt ordinary. I made coffee, scrambled eggs, opened the curtains. He came downstairs in a suit, tying his tie. You look serious, he said. Big meeting? Something like that, I replied. He laughed, kissed my forehead, grabbed his briefcase. Don't wait up, I'll probably be late. I smiled. That's fine. I've got a long day too. He left. I watched his car disappear down the street, then sat at the table in silence for a few seconds. Then I exhaled. The kind you don't realize you've been holding in for months. At 10:42 a.m., my lawyer called. It's been filed. He'll be notified today. I said, thank you, and hung up. The rest of the day went by quietly. I cleaned, answered emails, went for a walk. There was a strange peace in knowing that the end was already set in motion, that all I had to do was wait for the sound of it hitting him. And it came sooner than I expected. Around 6 p.m., the home phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said to pick it up. Hello? A woman's voice replied, calm, polite, official. Good evening. This is the Family Court of Fairfield County. We're calling to confirm that Mr. Richard Parker has received the divorce petition filed by his wife. My eyes flicked to the front door. He'd just walked in, setting down his keys. He froze when he heard the words echoing from the receiver. I didn't say anything. I just handed him the phone. He took it, confused. This is Richard Parker. Pause. Wait, divorce? What? There must be some mistake. He looked at me, eyes wide. Did you do this? I poured another cup of coffee. You should listen. They're explaining the process. He turned away, mumbling something about misunderstanding, about calling his lawyer. The color drained from his face. I sat back down, sipping quietly, letting the silence fill the room. When he finally hung up, he spun around. What the hell is this, Anna? It's what you think it is. He ran a hand through his hair. You can't just... You didn't even talk to me. I met his eyes. You didn't talk to me either. You just paid her tuition. He froze. What are you talking about? Daisy, I said simply. Boston Law School, 3 transfers this year, the apartment, the photos. You want me to list the dates? He opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence that followed was almost funny. I continued, calm. The court has everything. The bank statements, the receipts. They'll sort it out. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You could have just told me you knew. I did, just not with words. He backed away slowly, sat down, hands in his hair. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Yeah, I said. You never do. Until it does. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he whispered, You planned this. I shrugged. You planned yours first. The phone rang again. Probably his lawyer this time. He didn't answer. He just stared at me like he didn't recognize who I was. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he never did. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. You're really ending this? It ended the moment you sent her tuition money, I said. This is just paperwork. He stood there for a few seconds, then walked out of the kitchen. I heard him in the other room, pacing, opening drawers, slamming them shut. I stayed where I was. I'd done my part. The rest was just noise. Later that night, he tried one last time. Knocked on the bedroom door, voice softer. Can we talk? I opened it halfway. About what? He hesitated. I made a mistake. Which one? He sighed. You don't understand. I do, I said. That's why I'm done. I closed the door. I lay in bed listening to him move around the house like a stranger, opening closets, making calls that went unanswered. He slept on the couch that night. I didn't sleep at all, not because I was sad, but because my mind was too quiet, too calm. In the morning, he was gone. Left early, probably to meet his lawyer. The coffee pot was still half full. His mug sat beside it, cold. I took mine to the porch, watched the sun come up, and finally breathed. He didn't come home for 2 days after that call. I didn't ask where he went. I didn't care. When he finally walked through the door, he looked different. Tired, angry, scared. He said his lawyer told him he might lose everything. I said, that sounds about right. He opened his mouth to argue but stopped halfway, like even he knew there was nothing left to say. The next few weeks felt strangely peaceful. He stayed in the guest room. We spoke only when necessary, short, cold sentences about mail or bills. The house that once felt too small for the both of us suddenly felt too big, too quiet. Every sound echoed. Every memory did too. One morning, he knocked on the kitchen door while I was making coffee. You really don't want to talk about this? He asked. I turned off the coffee machine. What's there to talk about? He stared at me, waiting for something. Forgiveness, maybe. I gave him silence instead. He left that afternoon with a suitcase and never came back. The divorce moved fast. My lawyer handled everything with surgical precision. The financial records were enough to prove misuse of marital funds. The court granted me the house, the savings, and the majority of our assets. He walked out with his car, his clothes, and whatever pride he still had left. People always ask what it feels like to win like that. The truth? It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like balance. Like the world finally tilted back to where it should have been all along. A few weeks after the final hearing, he called me. Unknown number. I answered out of curiosity. Hey, he said quietly. You really went through with it. I did. Pause. I'm sorry. For what? I asked. He hesitated. For everything, I guess. I took a sip of my coffee. You should probably tell Daisy that, not me. He sighed. We're not together anymore. Of course you're not, I said. She was never built for the mess you made. He didn't reply. Just a long silence. Then, I never thought you'd actually leave. I smiled even though he couldn't see it. That's because you never thought I'd find out. Click. I hung up. That was the last time we spoke. Months passed. The house started to feel lighter. I painted the living room, changed the curtains, threw away the dishes we bought together. I even adopted a cat. She follows me everywhere, quiet but steady, like peace in fur form. On what would have been our 11th anniversary, I went to my favorite cafe alone, ordered his usual drink out of habit, then switched it for mine. The barista asked if I was waiting for someone. I smiled. Not anymore. Later that week, my lawyer sent me a copy of the final settlement. Everything was officially mine. The last line read, "Case closed." I printed it out and slipped it into a drawer. Not as a trophy, but as proof that I survived something that should have broken me. Sometimes I still catch myself replaying that night at the restaurant, The candles, the music, his hand reaching for mine right before he left for the restroom. How, in the span of a few minutes, everything I thought I knew about my marriage changed forever. It's funny how quiet betrayal sounds when it finally clicks. People ask if I ever miss him. I don't. I miss the version of myself who believed him, the one who thought love alone could hold a marriage together. But she's gone now, and I don't think I want her back. One evening, I found the necklace he gave me that night, the one I wore when the iPad lit up. I held it for a while, then set it on the counter next to a glass of wine. The light caught on the diamond just right, and for a second, it looked almost beautiful again. Almost. Then I dropped it into the trash. When the divorce papers finally came in the mail, I didn't cry. I didn't even open them right away. I just sat by the window with my coffee, the same way I did the morning after the call from the court. Same cup, same quiet. Only this time it didn't feel like the end. It felt like peace. He once told me marriage was about trust. I wrote in my journal that night. He was right, because once it's gone, there's nothing left to fix. I blew out the candle, closed the notebook, and went to bed. Alone, calm, and finally free.